Wasabi Wallet, unfairly private.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the show. It is Thursday. Typically, we do this on Friday, but hey, a day early because tomorrow is New Year's Eve. So we're back for another episode of Why Are We Bullish? We've got a killer panel. Excited to have everybody this week. So we're gonna dive into it. Plenty to chat about. Lots of interesting things, and some of the reasons that we give today may be it may encapsulate the entire year. That's definitely going to be on the docket for me. I'm going to chat a little bit about what has me excited this year. As always, this is live. Anything can happen. So I defer to my good friend Bill here.
We'll do it live.
Okay.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
Of course, if you haven't already, hit like, subscribe, share, all those good things. It really does help this get in front of more eyeballs. And without further ado, I am Ben with the BTC Sessions. This is your daily session.
Hodl the Bitcoin.
All right, before we bring in our panelists, take a quick look at where we are in the market right now. This is the bitbo.io dashboard. We're sitting at $47,060 some odd dollars per coin. Single US dollar will pick you up 2,125 sats. Over 90% of all Bitcoin, 90.07% of all Bitcoin have been mined at this point. And fees are up a little bit today. 16 sats per byte to get into the next block. Even if you're willing to wait an hour, 9 sats per byte. I haven't seen it like that in a few weeks, couple months. I can't recall, but it's been a while. It's been a low fee environment for a while here. So, yeah, I don't know to tell you whether to wait or not for doing things like opening lightning channels, moving around funds. Yeah, you know, maybe set them low and throw some replace by fee in there just in case. I think that's all I have to cover with Bitbo, but let's do a quick run of the sponsors and we'll bring everybody in. So Shakepay, if you're stacking sats in Canada, just stupidly easy and convenient way to do it. No deposit fee, no withdrawal fee. E-transfers are super simple. And on top of that, you sign up down below. Your first $100 after you buy, you'll get $30 for free. You get the same deal for if you refer a friend. And after you do refer a friend, you can shake your phone every single day for free sats. They also have their new their Sats Back Visa card, which I've been using. I'll be doing a video on that soon. Check that out. Links are down below. LEDN.io. You can use your Bitcoin for a variety of different services, but in particular, if you're in a pinch, you need dollars, but you don't want to sell your Bitcoin because that's a taxable event. You're worried about having to buy back it at a higher price. You can deposit Bitcoin, get a dollar loan to your bank account within 24 hours. And when you pay back those dollars, you get back the same number of sats. So check them out. They do have savings accounts for Bitcoin and USDC, and they also have their B2X offering to check out. I do live on Bitcoin. Bitrefill helps a ton with this. Just every possible gift card you can imagine, and you can pay via Bitcoin on chain or via Lightning Network. And again, you earn sats back as you shop. So check them out in the show notes. Keystone, you can know these guys. One of my favorite and most used hardware wallets. It's 100% air gapped. You never plug it into anything internet connected. It's all offline via QR code. It works with all of my favorite wallets: Blue Wallet, Wasabi, Spectre, Sparrow, and it's really badass in a multi-sig. So be sure to check them out. And finally, if you're backing up any important Bitcoin wallet, be sure to get it in solid steel. Paper doesn't always cut it, especially fire damage, water damage, all that kind of stuff. This gives you some peace of mind, and this is indeed how I back up my important stuff. With that, I will stop rambling. Let's get our panel in here. I'm going to bring in Jaime, Trent, Don, Tone. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. Let's do a quick round of intros. I'll just go down the line here. Just let people know who you are, what you do. Let's start with Jaime. Can you do a little intro for yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Ben, for inviting me. Jaime Garcia. You can always also call me Jaime.
my
That's okay.
terrible
My name-
pronunciation.
My name is like one of the hardest to like for people to get right because like it just the J's in Spanish confuse everybody.
Yeah.
I'm just a pleb. I'm Salvadoran. I'm part of the diaspora that sends remittances down to El Salvador. And I'll have to admit, I'm super new to Bitcoin, and so when we knew that El Salvador was gonna have Bitcoin as a legal tender, my family and I, we all just quickly got up to speed, and I'm not gonna lie, like just did a bunch of BTC sessions to get up to speed, and here I am. And so now my main focus is teaching Salvadorans how to use Bitcoin, and so I host Twitter Spaces every week in Spanish, and I get people to ask simple questions, and I teach them and walk them through what it is Bitcoin, how to use a wallet, and so on. I also host a monthly spaces on emerging communities in Bitcoin. So the first one I did is Bitcoin Jungle Costa Rica, and they're modeling a lot of what they're doing after Bitcoin Beach. And so I'm going to be hosting Bitcoin Lake in Guatemala in January, and then we got Bitcoin Beach Brazil for March, and in April we have Bitcoin Ecuador coming up. So I think those are all super exciting projects, and yeah, I mean, other than that, I'm the new president of Real Bedford FC supporters club in my city. So that's like a brand new title, but yeah, super excited to be here. Thanks, Fred.
Awesome. I'm glad to have you, and I'm gonna have to ask you about some of those events and everything. I'm curious, particularly about Costa Rica, because I'm taking a peek at that. But
Yeah.
we'll chat a little bit more about that. Let's go down the line. Trent, can you give yourself a little intro? Who you are, what you do?
Yeah, my name is Trent Dudenhoeffer. I am a certified financial planner at Watchdog Capital. Watchdog Capital, we are an SEC and FINRA registered broker dealer, and we believe in Bitcoin as money. We believe in a Bitcoin future. So I do what every other financial advisor does in terms of advising on your investments, your tax planning, your estate planning, all that fun stuff. But I actually understand Bitcoin, and I understand why our clients hold it. I want you to hold it as well. So we incorporate our clients' Bitcoin holdings in their financial plans. We are also licensed to do investment banking, secondary transactions, all kinds of different stuff. So really exciting developments going on at Watchdog, and really excited for this conversation. And thank you for having us all on, Ben.
Awesome. Glad to have you, man. Let's jump to Tone. Tone, give yourself a little intro for anybody that's watching that may not be familiar.
Hey guys, my name is Tom Vays, come from the traditional Wall Street environment. Started on shows just like this back on the World Crypto Network around 2015. Eventually led to my own YouTube channel in 2016. That channel was focusing a lot doing news shows and law shows, educational shows, along with Bitcoin price analysis shows. Lately, it's mostly price analysis shows, and been going around the country educating about Bitcoin. I focus more on the why people should get into Bitcoin, and that's why I loved your channel when you started, Ben, because you focused more on the how versus the why. So it's very, very complimentary. I've been recommending you for quite a while now for people to subscribe. Doing an amazing job.
Dude, thank you. I appreciate that, and I'm sure more than a few people that have been commenting and viewing have been funneled your way. So thank you for that. Let's jump lastly to Don. Dude, little intro, who you are, what you do.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. So I'm Don, Bitcoiner, class of 2016. I'm the co-host and co-founder of the Kansas City Bitcoin Meetup group here in Kansas City. So that's been really fun. We started that earlier this year, kind of right before the Bitcoin conference, and found out that like 3 of us there, the first meetup, we're all going to Miami, and Trent was actually one of them. So we got to hang out, get to know each other in Miami, which is just kind of a crazy thing to happen about 3 weeks before the conference. So that's been really fun to grow. I'm a former technologist, and now I just got rid of my old company, sold that earlier this year, focus on Bitcoin full time now. So in addition to the meetup, I do some angel investing in Bitcoin companies and contribute to Bitcoin Magazine every now and then.
Awesome. I love it. I love to hear the Bitcoin brain drain. All of the stories of I used to do this, but now I'm just doing Bitcoin, which is fantastic. So gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Everybody watching, thank you for being here. If you're unfamiliar, this is Why Are We Bullish? And pretty simple premise to the show. We go by 3 R's. Number 1, a guest is going to give a reason why they are bullish. Number 2, we're all going to riff on that reason together. And number 3, we're going to rotate to the next person until we're all the way through the panel. So I'm going to get us started this week with my reason for being bullish. And I'm going to say that this is kind of more of a, given that tomorrow's New Year's Eve, it's more of a reason for being bullish, which encapsulates the whole year. And it's a bit of kind of like a personal experience, I guess, in relation to the channel. So, so first up, I've got a little accompaniment here that I'm going to bring up on my screen here. So over the course of 2021, 1.85 million views on the channel, which is great in itself, given that I'm doing mostly tutorials. But what made me more excited about this is what people are watching. So I did a video on how to set up a node, and there's like 73,000 people that have watched that, which for a pretty niche thing, that's a lot of people watching a tutorial on how to run a Bitcoin node. And to me, that's very exciting. Also, how to run a Lightning node. Again, 55,000 people diving into running Lightning nodes just on this particular tutorial, which again, people kind of taking that self-sovereignty or taking the sovereignty into their own hands and running a Bitcoin node, running a Lightning node. That's pretty damn exciting to me. Another one that stood out of some of the top viewed ones for the year was BISC, decentralized exchange, peer-to-peer, no KYC. Again, like 46,000 people watching that one. And so what I'm noticing from kind of viewership on tutorials is people diving into things that I would have thought would be pretty niche and technical for a lot of people, but there seems to be a thirst for that kind of knowledge and that type of content, which I wouldn't have guessed. I would have thought that, and it's true that yes, a lot of people are watching like basic wallet videos, but the node stuff, the BISC videos, the coin join stuff, and you know, the self custody hardware, multisig, all that kind of stuff. There seems to be a lot of interest in that kind of content, and that gives me hope that while yes, a lot of people will defer to custody solutions, and you know, that's totally their decision. There is a pretty hardcore core group of Bitcoiners that seems to be growing in diving into these more decentralized self-sovereign options. And while I don't think everybody has to do this, it's important that they can. And there's a large number of people that are discovering they can, and it's not as technically difficult as they may have imagined. And so that's kind of why I'm bullish, not just this week, but this year, looking back at 2021 and seeing the kind of viewership and on those types of videos. Yeah, it makes me pretty excited and happy to see people diving into Bitcoin in this way. So I'm going to open it up to the panel, and maybe just ask in general for whoever wants to dive in, what kinds of questions and what kinds of I guess technical questions around Bitcoin have you guys encountered, given that you're in and around the Bitcoin space? What are people asking you? What are people trying to learn about? So whoever wants to dive in, feel free.
Yeah, I think for me, the most, usually the first question I get asked is, how do I get my, Bitcoin in my own custody. So how do I hold my own private keys is usually kind of step one. Once they've been down the rabbit hole a little bit, they start to realize I definitely don't want to leave my Bitcoin on an exchange. What's the best way to, hold my own private keys? And so then they typically figure that out. And then kind of the next progression seems to be, well, now how do I run a node? Well, now how do I run a Lightning node? And it kind of just goes from there. But I think, multisig is definitely something that I think has grown a lot in popularity, and people are starting to use more and more. We talk about that a lot, with early new Bitcoiners, kind of trying to drive them in that direction kind of from the beginning, for the most part.
What's been your experience with the people that have dove into multisig? Are they looking to do it as a kind of like to do it themselves, or are they looking for collaborative custody to kind of idiot proof it for their family? Like what's the approach here?
I'm going to interrupt because this is why I'm bullish. So let's save the multisig topic for like 10 minutes.
All right. We'll dive into multisig momentarily. So, Don, I will ask you, though, on the topic of custody, the initial like holding my own keys, do you get questions about like, what kind of wallet am I going to use? Things like that. Like what are you seeing there?
Definitely. Yeah. Usually the first thing is, which kind of mobile wallet should I use first for a small amount? And now there's so many great options over the last year, especially with the Lightning wallets coming out, Blue Wallet, Moon, so many great options. Usually people like to play around there, kind of get their comfortability up, and then go to an actual hardware wallet of some kind. So yeah, it's always fun to talk about, the benefits and disadvantages of each wallet, whether it be a Trezor, a Ledger, a Cold Card, so many different ones. And I think a lot of the times people just order kind of whatever's cheapest, usually has been my kind of what I've noticed, and try it out, and then kind of figure out what they like, don't like about it. And then when they get ready to go to the next step, they kind of, have a little bit of familiarity with the different options.
So I've got a question regarding El Salvador. I'm wondering so there's Chivo. Chivo is the government wallet. It's, if I'm not mistaken, on chain. It's not Lightning enabled. Is that correct?
So, yeah, Chivo is a funny animal because I think, and I wouldn't really refer to it as a wallet at all. I think it's an app. It's basically like a government bank which facilitates transactions within the Chivo ecosystem, and in that sense, it works very well. It does have the capability of Lightning, and they have recently upgraded their app so that it functions a little bit better. One of the things that people experienced when they went down to the conferences was a bit of a pain point between the traditional Lightning wallets and Chivo. A lot of transactions will get stuck, and so it seemed like the on-chain transactions were a little bit better. But of course, with on-chain transactions, we know that there's a bit of a wait, and it just sort of defeats the purpose of having lightning fast transactions, right? And so yeah, it's a bit of a different animal, and I have been encouraging folks down in El Salvador to use Chivo for some things, but definitely not store a whole lot of their savings on it. And I've been looking back at some of your tutorials and some of the referencing a lot of what you've done in order to get people to use some alternative wallets, right? But yeah, definitely it's when it comes to Chivo, it's a different animal. I think like it, we could talk about this the whole time we're here, so I won't monopolize any more of it. But and just throw in that some of the things that I have been on and that normies ask me usually is like things like like what does it mean to mine?
Mm.
And yeah, like how do you get Bitcoin? Things like that. But then after, and a lot of them just get hung up on that. But after that, it's like, how do I get a wallet?
Yeah.
Which wallet should I use? And then I've been working with some, actually in the audience, there's Dax Sosa from El Salvador, who I think he's maybe not, if it's not the first node in El Salvador, it's like one of the first. And we used your a video on how to set up a node for him to set up a node in El Salvador, and what he's
That's
doing
actually
now.
so exciting for me
Yeah,
to
no,
hear
for
that.
real. And like he just said, like, hey, greetings from El Salvador in the comments. So, shout outs to
Hey.
Dax. And one of the things that he's doing, he's actually because we know that the Chivo point of sale system was having a lot of issues, even more than the personal wallet. He's working with folks like usually small merchants to set up BTC Pay server solutions using his node as kind of like the point. And he's encouraging. Well, he's not also learning, but he's encouraging other people to set up their own nodes, their own Lightning channels, in order to set their own POS systems, so that they don't have to depend on these centralized options that I guess they were a necessary evil, to have like that opening mass adoption. But I think that we can all agree that it's something that is almost the antithesis of Bitcoin, right? So
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely. And it almost sounds like the Chivo wallet was having like liquidity issues with the connectivity of their Lightning, the Lightning portion of it. Like if they were having trouble getting Lightning transactions to go through, I imagine it's difficult to onboard, millions of people and have a reliable set of inbound liquidity for millions of people right out the gate. But regardless, yeah, I highly advocate that people go to non-governmental wallets if possible, have self-custody. Tone, I was going to ask you, when I saw you in Dubai back in October, we did a little Lightning workshop at Understanding Bitcoin, which again, thank you for having me out for that. That
Oh,
was
that was great.
incredible.
I'm really glad you came.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I really appreciated the invite, and I'm really glad that I made it out. Funny enough, when we were about to do the Lightning tutorial, I was going to use Moon Wallet, MUUN, and it was like the only time that for some reason the back end of Moon just wasn't working, literally just for the entirety of that session, and then it immediately was back to normal. So unfortunately, I didn't get to use that as the demo, but we did get to play around with Lightning. You had dove into Lightning like quite a couple years prior, and had like not the greatest experience, obviously, because liquidity was low and it was a little bit more difficult and fees were high and it wasn't super clear. Have you touched on like played with any Lightning wallets since, or are you still kind of like sidelining it until it gets a little bit
I'm
easier?
still kind of sidelining it actually. I've used some of the custodial solutions like Blue Wallet, and that's very smooth. But I've also tried using some of the non-custodial solutions like Phoenix,
Yep.
and I was not happy about that at all. Every time I went to open a Lightning channel, it was charging me 3,000 sats, which I thought was a little bit high considering the fees have been almost nothing. And then there was one time it charged me 9,000 sats to open a channel, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm gonna wait, and I'll get back to it in the near future. I'm not using my Bitcoin to buy $5 transactions anyway, so it's fine. I don't really need it at the moment. On-chain fees are pretty damn small. It's good for the transactions that I deal with, and but I will get back into it. It's on my to-do list for early next year.
Yeah, I think you'll find, and again, it depends on the types of transactions you're trying to do. Like if you're sending, hundreds or thousands of dollars. Lightning is not really like the initial, like an on-chain transaction is still completely affordable enough for that type of stuff. And the liquidity, depending on the wallet that you're using, you may end up incurring some on-chain transaction fees anyways as channels get established. So and there's definitely been some issues in and around that. I really do enjoy Moon, but some of the stuff that I found with Moon is if I receive it, it's so easy to receive payments like immediately with a zero setup on Moon. But then later on down the line, if you go to send a larger transaction, even if you're going to send like $100 out and you've received a lot of payments on Moon, just the way that they work it in the back end, they're doing, I believe, submarine swaps. It ends up requiring an on-chain transaction, and there's so many UTXOs involved in it that ends up being a pretty substantial fee if you come across that. Like in
But
comparatively,
we're talking about the same Moon, right? It's Pay with Moon. They're also doing
that's a separate one. So
one.
Yeah,
right.
So Pay with Moon is a different company, and then Moon Wallet, spelled MUUN, is a totally different.
Okay, got it.
There seems to be a lot of that happening in Bitcoin, where like Lightning Labs has the @Lightning Twitter handle, and like there's a little bit of
conference is called Bitcoin. Yeah, it's a confusing space.
yeah, exactly. Well, let's Trent, I want to get a little bit of your input on this as well. Like, what without diving into where we'll be talking about multisig a little bit, what have you encountered this year in terms of people trying to learn various things, whether it be wallets, Lightning, hardware? What are some of the things that you've found with people learning about Bitcoin this year?
Yeah, well, in general, just a lot more curiosity, a lot more people wanting to plug into the network. And then, I feel like mining gets so much attention in the media, probably because of its energy output. And, people will think, okay, well, if I'm buying Bitcoin, I might as well mine it, right? Like that sounds like the best way to go about it. And at that point, I'm like, all right, pump the brakes a little bit. Like all you really have to do is download Swan, get a recurring buy going every single day or every week at the very least. And then download this Blue wallet here. And then when you feel comfortable, like write down your seed phrase, send it over to Blue wallet, and then you'll be holding your own keys. So yeah, a lot of people go for that mining right off the bat, but it really doesn't take much to be sovereign with Bitcoin. And that's like the beautiful thing about it. So it's just those baby steps. But I think that getting them on the right exchange is arguably the most important. I used to send everybody to Coinbase. Like that's how I started too. And now Coinbase is the Bitcoin casino, as a lot of people would say. I can only talk so bad about them because that's how I started buying Bitcoin in the first place. But with other options like Swan or River that only have Bitcoin, I think that that's a great way to kind of mold a new coiner into only buying Bitcoin and staying away from unregulated securities.
Yeah, I two things about what you said there that really stood out to me. Number one is the baby steps, right? You can throw everything in the kitchen sink at somebody when they first walk in the door, but they're going to turn right back around and leave. And so getting those small attainable goals that they can just reach out and grab and then move on to the next, I think is very, very important. Something as simple as, get off zero and, like you said, set a recurring buy. And then the next step is just some self-custody, like learn how to use a wallet, and then you can hit the ground running. But the exchange is an important piece of it. And you're right. If you throw somebody into a situation where the first thing they're greeted with is 100 other coins that are treated with the same amount of what's the word I'm looking for, with that they're at equally as viable as
Right.
Bitcoin, it's it's setting somebody up for failure.
Promoted as equally viable. They're not,
Yeah.
but they're promoted as such. And
Yeah, right.
Coinbase is one of the big promoters of everything, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they have all the courses.
Until the SEC goes after it for security, and then Ripple gets removed. You know, like it's from Coinbase, like as if it was never there.
Yeah, it's absolutely, and I'm wondering when that's gonna. I mean, obviously, regulators are slow to act, and I'm not like a huge. I err on the side of people making their own mistakes, but at the same time, like regulators going to regulate. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, it puts us in a tough space. I mean, I was one of the first to drive that bus on YouTube, warning people that these are all unlicensed, unregistered securities, starting with Ethereum back in like 2016, 17 days. And it puts us in a tough place because on the one hand, we are pretty libertarian, and we don't want the SEC to exist. But on the other hand, they were created for a reason with a job to do. They're not very good at their job, but I don't understand how people think that a world of a billion tokens is the better world. Like I just don't get it. That's just me.
Yeah.
So Ben and Trent, and this is like one of the biggest pain points that I hear from Salvadorians is like, okay, which exchange can I go to? And actually, the Salvadoran diaspora, they a lot of the times they ask me, I got all my funds stuck in Binance or Coinbase. How do I get it off? And it's like, oh, and I had a lady, she's just a local lady, and she went on Coinbase. She bought Bitcoin Cash, I think, or Bitcoin SV. I can't remember which one it was. Thinking it's like, well, I'm going to buy this kind of Bitcoin because it's a lot cheaper than the other one, and so then I can, and like, and those are the sad stories because, like, the people run into. They're not like scams, but they don't have enough knowledge to discern the difference, and then they get themselves in trouble. And so then what I do recommend to people is just like Trent, if they are in the US, stay with Swan or Strike. If they're in Canada, I recommend Bull Bitcoin or Shakepay. I know Shakepay has Ethereum, but it's very different to like, there's almost like, okay, no, I'm not going to mistake Ethereum for Bitcoin SV, right? So, and so the simpler it is, the better. And because this is like number one pain point with a lot of Salvadorans in the diaspora. And I feel you, Trent, for sure.
While you're speaking, let's turn a negative into a positive, and I'm gonna actually use this opportunity to segue into your reason for being bullish, because I think you had floated to me that you wanted to talk a little bit about El Salvador in and around that. And since we're on that topic, do you want to just segue right into your reason for being bullish?
Yeah, definitely. So, obviously I'm bullish on El Salvador. I think lots of things will happen this year. I think that the honeymoon period with Bitcoin is over. I think that a lot of people are kind of questioning the government, but at the same time, I think that, Chivo not functioning the way that it was intended is also forcing people to really learn about Bitcoin, and it's forcing them onto other things. And so I think that that's a blessing in disguise almost, because it's making people think about it differently, right? And so I think, I'm really excited about, Salvi's learning about this and getting proficient in this. But I'm also bullish on, like, hopefully Bitcoin companies and developers go down and stay down and set up shop there, because it's a live experiment. And if you are a Bitcoin company, if you are a developer, even if you're not a Bitcoin company but a fintech company, knowing what's coming next in Bitcoin, you probably want to be on the ground looking at this live research project about this ecosystem and how in testing. I'm also bullish about the UX improvements that are going to come through. But the number one thing that I'm really bullish, and this just dropped like a few days ago, it's when I believe Jack Mallers and HRF, the Human Rights Foundation, Gladstein also announced this bounty to create a wallet that can print a QR code that is privately, where people can privately receive tips, and where you can choose to transact just like cash, where it's private. It's an e-cash based kind of a transaction where nobody needs to be involved, KYC free, and it's also pegged to the USD or a fiat. And why that's necessary, it's because, I mean, as much as we like to think that, we're going to be on a Bitcoin standard, I think that for a lot of emerging economies, for a lot of economies where their money is debased and inflation is runaway, they still need to be able to peg it to a point of reference that is relatively known by and accepted by everybody else. And I think that this bounty is there because it's not an easy problem to solve. But I think that the problem has been put forth for developers to look at, for people to maybe think about new ways to do it. I can think of some established wallets that may be on track to do it. I think in some ways Strike kind of does that in El Salvador and the US, but I think that it's the KYC free bit that needs to be resolved, and the privacy aspect. And so I'm super bullish about it. I don't know if we're going to find a solution in 2022, but I'm really excited. I can't wait till somebody finds a solution for that.
That's excellent. I love seeing people put up bounties for everything Bitcoin, because if anything we've learned, whenever there's an obstacle, Bitcoin's kind of like water. It just goes the path of least resistance and kind of finds a way, right? Like, there's so many great minds focusing on this stuff, and it's really encouraging. I'm curious, have between Trent, Don, and Tone, have any of you guys been down yet?
No, it's on my list for next year.
Yeah, unfortunately not.
I really feel bad about missing it in November. I was at a different conference in Malta. I had committed to that. It was right after our event in Dubai. And it's my second event in Dubai, not the one you came to, Ben. And yeah, I feel bad by not going there. But next time there's an event there, I'll absolutely go. Considering it for January, but I'll be in other Latin American countries. But I don't think I'll come through El Salvador. But I definitely want to come. And that really is probably the most bullish thing that happened to Bitcoin this year with El Salvador. I'll comment on it real quick. Though when the news broke, I was not as enthusiastic as I am now, and as I was after like a week or two, after thinking about it some more, after watching other people comment on it. My initial reaction was, this is not the best thing that could have happened. I really wanted to see El Salvador, the announcement, I thought would have been better if they took the Michael Saylor route. Like, hey, we're just not going to criminalize Bitcoin. We're not going to do anything. You want to spend it, you can spend it. We're not going to make it legal tender, but we are going to start putting government treasuries into Bitcoin. That's what I thought would have been the best route for El Salvador. Not pissing off the IMF, not pissing off the United States, not creating this, backlash, like how you're going to make everyone in El Salvador use Bitcoin because it is a developing nation. In hindsight, after giving it a lot more thought, it was, this was the best thing. I know all of those things are going to be kind of rough, but now it's easier for me to stand on stage in a developing country speaking about Bitcoin, feeling comfortable that I can say, well, I know you may not like it, but I'm speaking about a currency which is legal tender in an actual nation. So it's like me speaking about the South African ZAR, right? Like any other currency. So it did create this thing where now it's really hard to accuse Bitcoin of being like for only criminals and only used for bad stuff, it becomes a very silly argument, because the counter argument is, why are you? It's a reserve currency of a legitimate nation. Well, you can't say that. Right? That's not true. That can't be true anymore. So I think that part of it is incredibly bullish into the future. And part two, as to why I really now like what El Salvador did, is that other Latin American countries are looking and probably seriously considering. I don't think this spreads to like other parts of the world. Like we all thought it might be like a country like Liechtenstein or like a Hong Kong or like one of these countries to adopt it. But now it's going to be other Latin American countries, because it'll make it easier to trade with El Salvador. They already speak the same language, which is another important element in the equation. They're neighboring nations, and all the other Latin American countries are watching. And pretty soon there'll be a follow-up.
I'm wondering how this the whole bond thing is going to how that will gradually play out, because I mean, one, the as they start to make payments, so what it's basically 50% goes into Bitcoin, the other 50% is going into like mining infrastructure and various other things. And after, so there's a 6 point something percent coupon on it, and after 5 years you also start getting paid out 50% of the appreciation of the Bitcoin quarterly, I believe. I mean, especially as that appreciation payout starts to loom and begins to actually be paid out, that's going to be a pretty wild thing to watch when government bonds around the world are paying an absolute pittance. So I'm just wondering, like, how long do we think it is before somebody looks at that, or like at what point do external nations look at the bond issuance, and what has to happen for them to look at that and say, oh, that was actually in our eyes successful and maybe we should mirror it? What do you guys think about that? Like, what has to happen for it to be considered successful? And anybody can jump in here, doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think if they get a good subscription on the initial float of the bond, I think just that right there will have a bunch of other countries at least kicking the tires and potentially looking at some of the modeling that I think Blockstream and some other companies did about if Bitcoin does, X percent appreciation. They did some various percentages to model out the returns. And I mean, really, it's not that crazy to think that they could potentially wipe away a good portion of their national debt just, from one bond offering on Bitcoin. So I think countries are probably already paying attention, and if the subscription for the first offering goes well, it's probably just a matter of time.
There was a question from Canadian Bitcoiners. What does the general population in El Salvador think about Bitcoin? Like, what are people on the ground actually saying? What's the general sentiment?
So, and this is where, we have to kind of temper expectations a little bit, because, we have to remember that, El Salvador is a country with needs beyond Bitcoin. And the vast, like 99% of the people before Bitcoin was announced had not even heard of Bitcoin. So, and they have some real needs, like they have a huge infrastructure and social deficit from years and years of neglect and civil war and corruption. And so while Bukele, who is a populist and knows media quite well and knows how to use media to his advantage and to push his own agenda, will say the right things so that the international Bitcoin community kind of applauds those efforts. He also has to run a country whose number one problem is crime and unemployment. And while perhaps the political corruption is not as bad as it was before. There's institutional corruption, and I don't know if you guys know the difference, but basically, like, okay, like people who let's just assume that everybody who got elected is good people, right? They can only do so much before they go down to, like, the social services and healthcare and all of that, and policing, where there is some institutional corruptions by bureaucrats. And so they have such a huge agenda to tackle. And and one of the biggest criticism was that there was no education given to the population about Bitcoin. And in retrospective, I had to think about, what this is all about, is that El Salvador has a huge financial debt to the World Bank, to the IMF, to the US. It was unsustainable what they were doing, and to actually pay those debts and extend debts and get more money to run the country, there were some things that were going to be asked for in exchange of a country who essentially has nothing else to give. And so, and I don't know all the reasons. I'm not privy to anybody in the government, but I think that this is probably like, kind of like a bold move by somebody who knew that in some way the Salvadorans had nothing else to lose, and why not make that, right? Why not? And I think he is an innovator. I mean, he started tweeting about using Bitcoin back in 2017. Right. And so, so it's, for a lot of people, this was not surprise. For the average Salvadorian, my mom and dad are there right now on vacation. My sister's living there. We're all based in Canada, but, my sister has chose to live there for the time being. And she's lucky enough she can work remotely. And so, but, the reality is that she has said this to me, and I speak to them every day. Nobody's using Bitcoin. Nobody wants to, unless you go to places where, that's the shtick. Nobody's using Bitcoin. So this is going to take some time. It's going to take some time. People are very skeptical because of Chivo and the misgivings that Chivo has, and I think that it's going to take some time, and that's kind of why I said earlier. I think that companies going out there, setting up shop, setting up opportunities for Salvadorans to take part in the Bitcoinization of the country is probably one of the biggest things that can ensure the success of Bitcoin, right? But I mean, truth be told, the vast majority of people are not using Chivo or Bitcoin in general, unless you're going to those places where it is used, like El Sonte and just some other communities. And I think in some ways it's good, because I think the need has to come from the bottom, right? So.
Yeah, I agree. I think a bottom up approach, kind of a grassroots, again, like in El Zonte and Bitcoin Beach. I think that's the important part. That's where it actually grows organically, and people that are exposed to it that way are more likely to be interested and benefit from it. So, if these new laws help some people along the way and draw some eyeballs, and some people benefit from it and are doing remittances that way, then fantastic. But I've always been on the side of not mandating things, but allowing people to do as they please, and I hope they continue to.
So Ben, one last thing on that though, that you mentioned remittances. Now that was a huge pain point using the traditional routes like MoneyGram and Western Union, and nothing against those companies. It's just that, I think that, with the dawn of Lightning, I mean, I've sent money to my mom and dad through Lightning, and it's pretty slick. I mean, and they can go and cash it out, and then they got some fiat to use down there, right? But or in the supermarket they actually take Bitcoin. But like that is like that play alone is worth it. It's just that it's going to take some time for people to adopt that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, again, it not only draws some eyeballs within El Salvador for those that it positively affects, but it's gonna draw some attention around the world, and even uh, without government intervention and legal tender laws and everything like that, it still points to the fact that people can use Bitcoin around the world without anybody telling them otherwise, which is fantastic. So I guess we'll see how this plays out in the coming number of years. I think in general it'll have the feeling like things like Lightning or SegWit did, where people overestimate what's going to happen in a short amount of time, but underestimate what's going to happen over a lengthier period of time. And yeah, I guess we'll leave that there. Thank you for that topic. I'm glad we got to chat a little bit about that. And we're going to jump to our next now. Everybody watching, thank you for being here, of course. Like, share, sub, all that good stuff. But we're going to jump to Trent. Dude, what's on your mind? What are you excited about? You sounded like you had some multisig stuff on your mind.
Yeah. So that's what I want to talk about. I'm bullish on multisig. For those that are watching or listening that don't really know what multisig is, which most of them probably do, especially if they watch any of your videos, Ben, but a multisig wallet really requires you to approve or sign a transaction from more than one device before you can spend that Bitcoin. So it's basically the idea of needing two separate keys to open or to access a vault. So the concept has been around for thousands of years, and it's playing a role in Bitcoin as well. And I was talking to Nick Newman, CEO of Casa Hodl, just a couple weeks ago, and I just asked him out of the blue, like, Nick, if Bitcoin is going to be as valuable as we all think it is, what is the argument against multisig? Like, why wouldn't everyone have a multisig setup? And he largely agreed with my thinking there. And so I'm bullish on multisig for every participant on the Bitcoin network holding any sort of substantial value. Not only does multisig prevent against like a brute force attack, like if someone, try to rob your house and steal your hardware wallet or something like that. Jameson Lopp, who's also from Casa, he does a great job of documenting some of those stories. It's unfortunate to read about them, but it's really good to learn about them. But going along with that, you can also prevent your own stupidity as well. And so when you're talking about Bitcoin, which is, the most scarce asset in the world, most scarce asset humankind has ever come across, you're going to want to cover as many fail points as possible. And so when we break it down, like Casa, like I mentioned, they are a multi-sig provider. There's Unchained Capital. There's probably others as well that I just don't really know or can't think of. I am a financial advisor. Like, that's what I do for my fiat mining, my day job. I'm passionate about my clients owning and understanding Bitcoin. The clients that I work with are pretty Bitcoin savvy. Like, some of them are even more Bitcoin savvy than I am. But I think that the potential for other financial advisors, for regular advisors, to onboard their normie clients using multisig for one of these providers, I think is like a huge potential. A lot of first-time users are hesitant about controlling their own keys. And I'm even like hesitant to tell them to take custody of their own keys right away. And I think that using a provider can alleviate a lot of that stress. I think it can be a really great way to onboard newbies and to control their own keys, in a sovereign way. And I think that financial advisors can and should be the ones that are introducing this concept to their clients. Financial advisors are the most trusted person that most people have in their corner in regards to their money. And so I think that financial advisors should be the one introducing this concept. Now, there's a lot of regulatory hurdles to jump over before that happens. Like, I'm probably getting a little ahead of myself here, but so there's some work to be done, but I really do think that the potential is there. And then I'm also, along with Casa and Unchained and those, I'm also bullish on the DIY multisig, like through Spectre and Sparrow. So I'm in the process of creating my own multisig wallet on Spectre, thanks to your videos, Ben. I'm just waiting on my last freaking hardware wallet. It's taking forever to get here with the international shipping, but I'm almost there. Creating my own multisig wallet using 3 different signing devices, 3 different hardware wallets, using my full node to verify the transaction. Like, that's easily the most cypherpunk thing I've ever done in my life. I'm feeling like pretty good about myself here, and I got to slow down because like I haven't actually done it yet, but it's badass and it's really, really cool. So like, to wrap it all up, I'm just bullish on the impact of multisig. I think it can be a great way to onboard new people through financial advisors whenever we can get over that regulatory hurdle, and to do so in a sovereign way. And then obviously I am bullish on the reduction of potential attacks, and even from your own stupidity. And I think it's appropriate for nearly every user on the network. And I'm just really excited to hopefully watch multi-sig addresses and wallets explode over the next coming years.
It's I gotta say, I've like multi-sig is fun to play with, and there's so many different ways to do it. But like so I utilize I've utilized some multi-sig stuff and in various different capacities. DIY, I played around with Casa and Unchained. I've done a lot of different stuff. The draw with something like Casa or Unchained is like how fault tolerant it is, right? You can screw up so monumentally bad and still have access to your funds. Like even just thinking of, say, a 2 of 3 with Unchained. So you have like, say, a couple of treasures, you have a backup of each treasure, and you have each one of those pieces of information in a different location. So maybe you have a treasure at your home, a treasure in a safety deposit box, and like a backup with a backup of each device with a family member in a different location. And then Unchained has a key. And so what can happen is, out of those 4 items, you could literally lose 75% of everything you have, and you'd still be able to go to Unchained and be like, holy shit, guys, I need to move my money. I just need to just be the other part of this sign. And you'd still be okay. And like, that's a pretty big deal, especially when you're talking about a situation where you're like, I want my family to be able to access this if I'm dead. And, in something like that, they could bring, your will or prove that they're next of kin and like a death certificate, and the company would be able to be like, okay, this checks out, we can help you here. And that might not be the case unless you've got some technically savvy family members in like a DIY, although
Right.
I still really do enjoy DIYs. On the DIY front, there's so many, like you said, Spectre, Sparrow, Blue Wallet, like the mobile multi-sig is crazy, doing like the air gap stuff with like Keystone or Foundation. That stuff is awesome. Air gapping with Cold Card is crazy. And then one that I'm about to dive into, I don't know if you would have heard of. Have you heard of Nunchuck?
I want to say I've heard the name.
So they're kind of same idea as like a Spectre or a Sparrow, where you like import keys, well, like public keys from various devices, and then you create a multi-sig. But this one has a messaging feature, and the way the idea behind it would be, maybe you're like a business and you have a multi-sig in order to sign and release funds into hot wallets or something like that. Getting a partially signed Bitcoin transaction to various people to sign in different geographically diverse locations can be a bit of a pain in the ass, like trying to get that file over to somebody, get them to import it and sign it, and then add a signature and then send it down the line to the next person. In Nunchuck, the way it works is each person just has the app on their phone with one key, or like with an air gapped option to sign, and they sign their part of the transaction, and then through the messaging feature with a group, send the partially signed Bitcoin transaction to the next person down the line to add their signature. So it's all encapsulated in a single app. So there's none of this,
Very
here's
cool.
like a TXT file that you got to figure out what to do with. It's just all kind of done, which is super cool. So there's a ton of stuff happening with Multisig that is super interesting. I'm curious if any of the rest of the panel has tinkered with Multisig. What's everybody's experience so far?
Man, I'm still old school. I haven't really. I tinkered with it once. Jimmy's song ended up in a one Bitcoin bet that had to do with the election, and I needed to be the third key in case there was a disagreement, basically. So I was the trusted third key holder. It was we did use on-chain to set up the 2 of 3 multisig. It was not easy. It was because all three were using like different hardware solutions.
Yeah.
So it's exactly what you said, dealing with like TXT files. So it was like a nightmare, like setting that up. And then I'm like, Jimmy, I really hope I don't have to be involved in like getting it out. So I hope you guys could work it out. And when the bet ends, like 2 months later. So that was my only experience dealing with it. It's still not as user friendly as I'd like, but it sounds like Nunchuck could be something, as long as, you know, smart technology people review it, right? So that the app itself doesn't actually get to see what you do and who's signing. And that's the problem. Like, I have a degree in financial engineering. I used to code, but like I'm totally clueless in validating this stuff from a technological perspective. So I rely on guys like Peter Todd and Jaime Salop and you know, my friends at Blockstream for this kind of stuff. So it's again this weird concept of Bitcoin is trustless trust. You trust the fact that it's trustless, but at the same time, you've got to trust the more technologically inclined developers. And now you run into a problem: which developers do you trust? And these were debates with people like Roger Ver that I've had for years, where it's like, well, you can't trust the developers of blockchain because they have an agenda or some of the others. But here, trust my 2 guys.
Yeah.
Like, okay. So this was these are some of the issues, but I just want to join the last 2 reasons for why Bitcoin is bullish together, and answer also comment on the question about the bonds. I think a lot of it is going to depend on El Salvador's ability to protect the Bitcoin. I mean, like, this is big. I mean, protecting your Bitcoin is as challenging as like protecting your nuclear reactor that runs the power in your country. It's about the same. I mean, the screwing up one will obviously kill a lot of people, so it has a very different social effect. But, you know, screwing up and like one hacker takes the wealth of your country is also pretty much potentially the death of your country. Going back to how El Salvador ended up owing so much money to the World Bank and probably the IMF. I mean, there is a whole book on this called Confessions of an Economic Hitman that explains the entire process really, really well.
Yep.
Bonds, the wallet, the government funded wallet, bonds. It's like, how is Bukele protecting the Bitcoin? Because recently people started looking into how is Michael Saylor protecting his Bitcoin. It's like, oh, he's not protecting his Bitcoin. Coinbase is holding it for him, right? Which is a whole other risk factor, right? Besides the fact that it's Coinbase and somehow magically avoided getting hacked, which I'm really, really surprised up to this point, considering their competence in actually understanding the whole crypto space. But yeah, so something like that, it's really scary and really challenging. So the multi-sig solutions really need to apply to at the national level, like El Salvador, and securing, you know, the Bitcoin in the bonds. And I think that's going to be the main driver, whether other countries are going to do something and what is their solution for security going to be. So a lot of these are the questions that really need to be answered.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that you combined the last two topics. It is a very good point that again, to Trent's point about multi-sig, the security behind it is pretty resilient, although takes a little technical know-how unless you're using like a collaborative custody model. But yeah, for an entire nation state to have, especially over time, substantial amounts of money sitting in Bitcoin, you've got to be so careful with how that is handled and how many potential points of failure there could be there. And it seems to me like a multi-sig in a situation like that, like a robust one with making sure there's no potential conflicts of interest of those who have access to keys is a no-brainer. Like that's something that needs to be there. So I don't know. I'm curious.
That's a really interesting thought to have. Like to make it easy, like in the United States, what would that look like if this was happening in the United States? Like Joe Biden would have a key and Nancy Pelosi and yeah, well,
Kamala.
to broadly speak, yeah, and then like I don't know, the Department of Defense or something, like that would be really interesting to see how that would play out.
Right. Well,
and
you gotta figure the Treasury. I mean, it's kind of their job, right? Like the Treasury is going to have a key. The Federal Reserve will probably have a key. The president is supposed to have a key. And there might be a few more, like president, vice president. And it's going to be a pretty serious multi-sig. It will probably be something like a 7 of 9, something like that.
That's around what I was thinking too.
It would have to be like a 7 of 9, and they would have to be. And at that point, no 3 of them can be on the same plane.
Exactly.
Right? And
or in the same party.
Also, I would say that in that 3 of 9, it's a really good exercise to go through with somebody to write up. Out of that 7 of 9, I bet you 1 or 2 of them are going to be people that no one should know who they are, except the other people with the key, right? Because that takes away a whole other potential risk element. And also, some of those might be like corporations, like a professional storage solution, like a BitGo, for example.
Well, what about?
This sounds like sorry, Ben. I was gonna say, like, this sounds like it needs a proper paper, like a thesis, like
right, like
if you are gonna do this, this is what you do.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's write something up.
And then what happens if by some crazy thing, like 3 of those keys disappear?
Yeah. Well, and I think we're also kind of thinking inside the box here, in that it's all keys are people that are in positions of power within the U.S. government, but it could be that 1 or 2 of the keys are potentially allocated to heads of state in other nations that are allies.
Yeah,
so you could have like an allied nation that has like a single key to your multi-sig, and if shit starts to hit the fan, you can reach out and say, hey, like, listen, we got to protect the treasury.
And also each key would be with like a time lock, right? I mean, this is one of the things that Jade, the wallet that you helped do a tutorial on over in Dubai. I mean, it's a 2 of 2 multi-sig, but if you lose 1 of the 2 keys, your funds do turn into a single key a year later. So you screwed up. It's not the end of the world. It's the end of the world for a year, right? But then you still get it back. So there would have to be like those kinds of controls on many of those keys. Maybe not all of them, but many of them.
Man, there's so many angles you could take, especially like, yeah, the amount of responsibility in protecting a nation's wealth that could potentially be, with if you don't protect it well enough, it could literally just be swept away into another nation's wallet, is or just some dude's wallet. It could be, maybe there's a double your Bitcoin giveaway that an overzealous member of Congress.
And this is why people got upset when people discovered that like Blockstream as an ultimate backup to their liquid product, the liquid sidechain, they had the ultimate backup. I was like, hey, if people are not going to be responsible with their keys, then Blockstream kind of gets the ultimate possession of it. But and everyone ended up getting really, really upset at that feature. And they're like, well, what's the other solution? Just like destroy it? At least in this case, you have a trusted company that built the product that you can then get it from them. I mean, it was more complicated than that, but I mean, people need to be more responsible and actually check their keys after like X amount of time. Otherwise, there is the ultimate default.
Yeah, absolutely. Huh. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing kind of the evolution of multisig in the context of nations diving down this route. And I really hope that it doesn't just end up with, a Michael Saylor strategy on a nation state level. Because like, imagine the amount of power that a single company would have over an entire nation.
Mm-hmm.
Federal Reserve. There you go. Never mind. imagine if a single entity had all of, okay. I guess I don't know. Did you want to add anything else, Don, in regards to multisig? I wanted to get your thoughts in there too.
Yeah, the only other thing I wanted to add was just in regards to Taproot and how the Taproot upgrade enables multi-sig transactions not to stand out so much from single sig transactions. So that should go a long way for adoption and privacy as well on the main chain, which is awesome to see.
Yeah, absolutely. It also helps with Lightning too, given that you can't tell if it's a Lightning channel open and close with Taproot and Schnorr signatures down the line. That'll be hugely helpful. So yeah, awesome. Well, let's keep it rolling. We're gonna toss it over to Tone now, dude. What's on your mind? What's your reason for being bullish? What are you excited about?
Man, I've really been thinking about this, but I figure I'm the trader, the technical analyst. My first time on your show, maybe second. I think it's first.
I think first time for this for Why Are We Bullish? Yeah.
And I'm gonna stick with the technical picture of Bitcoin. The fundamentals are there, obviously, with El Salvador. I can't wait for like next year. Hopefully, Bitcoin is consistently above 100,000, and I think that would be the barrier before many companies start switching to sats. I think a lot of people are hesitant on switching to sats before Bitcoin is consistently above 100K, and that's gonna change a lot, right? You're not gonna get that call from a friend asking you about Ripple anymore, or about those fake Bitcoins that are significantly cheaper. Now, this could also have a huge let me not use that word. It will have a huge effect across the whole industry, and where all these other tokens are also going to go into their smallest unit, if they can, because there are tokens that launched as their smallest unit. But once Bitcoin goes, just starts denominating everything in sats, I think that's going to be a huge bullish catalyst. But that's for next year's shows. For this year's show, I'm going to go with a technical picture. The fact that so many of us analysts were wrong at how high Bitcoin is going to get this year. I was one of the low end ones. I was just thinking 100 to 150K, and I was on the low end versus some of the other guys like my friends Willy Woo, Plan B. And a lot of us analysts were a little over bullish based on how fast Bitcoin was rising very early in the year and late last year, so how high it would get. And that kind of demoralized a lot of people. A lot of people were expecting it to be that high. And Bitcoin's been consolidating now for a year in a pretty bullish fundamental environment. And I still think we're in a bullish cycle from a technological, from a TA perspective on trading. It just needs, if it has another month or two of consolidation, and people are going to get pretty frustrated that Bitcoin isn't going anywhere. It's at almost the same price it was in late January. So it hasn't done anything in a year. So that breakout is going to be sweet, and some people are going to miss out because they're going to just get frustrated that Bitcoin isn't doing anything. So from a technical perspective, I am still very bullish on Bitcoin going into next year. And I do think that $100,000 target just got pushed back by a quarter. Like it's okay. Like we'll get there.
Do you? So, question for you: do you give any credence to kind of the general idea of like the 4-year kind of cycle? Do you think that plays out at all? Like in general, like obviously there's some effect, but it's, I imagine, diminishing. Like what are your thoughts there?
There is a slightly diminishing effect. Also, I mean, the halving cycle is obviously very important. Bitcoin's halving cycle, and I debated this actually with another name drop, Peter Todd, where we were just talking about from an economic perspective, where it would have been a lot smoother for Bitcoin not to have these halving cycles. Like imagine if every single difficulty adjustment, there was a small change in the Bitcoin mining reward. There would not be this shock every 4 years on losing half your revenue coming in. But at the same time, that shock gets counteracted by the hype that the halving brings, which potentially is more beneficial to the entire system and the price of Bitcoin. That event is absolutely epic. It comes around once every 4 years. So, it's probably better that it's done this way for that shock factor than if it was smoothed out. Now, the 4-year cycle in price, it's hard to measure. I mean, Bitcoin does a lot of things within a 4-year cycle. It usually has a peak. It usually has a bear market, but they're not consistent. And they are going to be lengthening. So you'll always find a 4-year cycle. Like, when do you start the 4-year cycle? Do you start it from the day Bitcoin topped in 2017? Do you start it from the day Bitcoin bottomed in December 2018? Or do you start it from COVID, which was, a huge catastrophic event? Also, I believe that's when I became bullish. I was very skeptical on Bitcoin's price rise in the first half of 2019. Looked a little silly there for a while, from when Bitcoin went up from like $3,000 all the way to $14,000 within less than 6 months, in about 4 months. And I couldn't explain it. Like, it didn't make any sense why it's rising so much. In hindsight, it was Plus Token out of China that had like a ridiculous number of Bitcoin. So, so the reasons, you find out the reasons later. So it's really hard to time these 4-year cycles because they're not consistent. We have a halving approximately every 4 years, but Bitcoin is going to do different things. With every halving, people have different expectations. At which point do you start pre-running the halving? Do you pre-run it a year in advance? That's too early. It's going to top out. It's going to correct. Do you pre-run it a month in advance? Maybe that's too late. So things are going to act very, very differently around each halving. I mean, history is going to rhyme. It's not going to repeat. So looking at a 4-year cycle from halving to halving, yes, we're going to have a high, and yes, we're going to have a low. But you might have that high within a few months after the halving, or you may have a low within a few months after the halving, right? Swing low, and then the high comes in way later. So there will be these 4-year cycles with a top and a bottom, but they're not going to be consistent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's who was I talking to? His Twitter handle is Fairfree Digital on Twitter, and he was talking about like you're saying, kind of the lengthening. His thesis is lengthening bull markets, where it becomes frustratingly long for when people expect a top to happen. Like, everybody was expecting it within this calendar year. There was going to be some big blow off top near the end of the year, but that's not exactly how it has played out. And so he was kind of looking at, based on blocks after the halving, and he kind of was looking at, well, the 2013 one happened X amount of blocks after the halving. The 2017 one was quite a bit more blocks after the halving. And he was kind of saying, well, if that trend continues, then it wouldn't be, it would be a quarter or two into 2022 that we would see something like that. So, but then he also believes that even with that, you're still going to get equally violent bear markets. They'll just be shorter. So I don't know if that's going to play out, but interesting idea of, I think it makes more sense to look at Bitcoin in terms of if we believe there's a 4-year cycle at all. It's better to look at it in block time rather than human time, because it's the supply schedule doesn't actually adhere to human years. It adheres to Bitcoin blocks. So I don't know. And if anybody else wants to comment on, again, this is Tone Vays Playhouse here, but I don't know. What were your expectations for the year versus what was expectation versus reality?
Yeah, I would just say, like, Tone, I'm a financial advisor. I have zero TA expertise whatsoever. I didn't pay attention in those classes. But I just look at, like, the current landscape of financial assets. Like, you have the stock market, you have the bond market, you have real estate that are all at all-time highs. And looking by traditional metrics, looking very, very expensive. And then you have Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is like one of, if not the only assets that I can find right now that look either fairly or undervalued. And so I equate Bitcoin as like a puddle next to lakes and oceans of different asset classes that are just waiting to spill over. So kind of like you said, the fundamentals are looking very bullish. And yeah, I couldn't agree more just from looking at how overpriced everything else looks.
Tone, just a quick question. Do you think that we're due for like a traditional market correction? Like, I'm thinking about, especially here in Canada, the housing bubble, and we're overheated. A lot of people think we're not, but I mean, housing is not sustainable the way that it is right now, and so, and so if there is that correction, where does Bitcoin fit in and all of that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm actually not looking for a stock market correction. I wasn't looking for a stock market correction in 2020 until COVID came around. COVID was the correction because the government just shut down the economy. I've been bullish on the stock market for a decade, and I remain bullish on the stock market for a decade. Even more so now, bullish on the stock market because, again, due to these shutdowns, they favor corporations that have stock versus, mom and pop shops versus, the regular business. All of this favors it. Like, if people aren't going out shopping because they're scared of COVID, they're ordering from Amazon. That boosts Amazon stock. That doesn't help your little bodega next door. So much is favoring the stock market. Also inflation. Inflation also rises the stock market because if there's inflation, businesses charge more money for their goods. Hence, the stock will rise. They have to pay higher salaries, and the stock will rise because they're charging more money for the product. Now, when a government starts to implement price controls, the stocks will fall, right? Because if Apple can't raise the price of their cell phone because the government told them that they can't, meanwhile, there's inflation, what do, right? So the company can't make as much money. So I remain very bullish on the stock market into the next couple of years, even with this whole situation, because again, it's the companies whose stock are being favored by these shutdowns. Now, granted, there was, of course, a crash because people panicked. No one knows what's going on. And also, they did shut down even pretty much many of those companies. So that's what I'm bullish on the general stock market. Sorry, go ahead. There's another question.
Tone, I was just going to say, you mentioned price controls. Did everybody see this article From The Guardian, we have a powerful weapon to fight inflation, price controls. It's time we consider it. Like, this is not The Onion, friends.
Yeah, it's really out of control. It's becoming very hard to tell what's satire and what's real. Like I'm almost going to the Babylon Bee now to get real news, because it's like it's kind of giving you anyway. It's really bad right now. I don't even know how we're gonna turn around. Yeah. But it's good for the stock prices. It's good for the stock prices of these companies.
It's true. At what point does it get to like Weimar levels, though? Like, how bad does it have to get before? I mean, it kind of it's shit like NFTs is already like the first kind of
that's stupidity, right? No, but that's plain stupidity, right? The Weimar level, the Zimbabwe level, the Venezuela level, that's a loss of confidence in government. So that's not money printing. Like, no amount of money printing will do that. It's a loss of confidence in government. So if the U.S. government implements price controls, that can happen, right?
Yeah.
My personal biggest catalyst for the U.S. dollar going to hyperinflation is a breakup of the country into like some states either merge together or a single big state becomes its own country. I know people think that's crazy and impossible, but the timeline is, another decade and anything can happen. But these are the kinds of events that create hyperinflation, right? Like, for example, Joe Biden being elected for the third term, right? Because the country is in trouble and it needs it, right? Like these are the kinds of things that create hyperinflation. That's when people lose faith in the money and no one wants to hold the money because they don't have faith in the government in charge of that money. Printing a bunch of money does not cause that level of inflation. It'll cause 3%, 5%. I know people are freaking out over 5% inflation. It's not that different than 3%. I'm sorry, guys. It's not that. It's not the end of the world. But if you're talking 25, 30% inflation, like what happened when Russia and Ukraine kind of started shooting each other over in the border back in 2014, when then Russia took Crimea, both currencies devalued 50%. Now, why would that happen? Now, in Ukraine, sure, people in Ukraine are probably afraid that Russia can just take them over. But why is the Russian currency devaluing 50%, right? They obviously have a much stronger military. But Russian currency devalued 50% as well. And that's because of loss of confidence. Well, if Russia goes to war with Ukraine, what happens? How is it going to reflect on the US and Europe? So the world is just, whoa, you know what, let's hold off on this and see where it goes. So it's these kinds of events that need to take place in order for a currency to really go into serious inflation.
Wow. All of this talk reminds me of a really good, I want to say fiction book, but you never know. If you guys haven't read it, it's called The Mandibles, and it's set in the US from the year 2029 to the year 2047. And it follows a previously rich family during the time when the US formally actually fully defaults on its debt and just says, we're not paying this. And then it follows like the hyperinflation of the currency and all of the shit that happens thereafter, and basically follows it through like a Weimar like collapse, and how like external nations handle that, and the creation of like a global currency kind of thing. They do mention Bitcoin, but like in a passive. Yeah, it was written.
It's got to be recent, right? If you say they mentioned Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's like within the past couple of years here, I think.
Okay, so no movie yet. All right.
Yeah, no movie yet. Unfortunately, the way that they mention that they're like dismissive of Bitcoin in it. It was 2016. But the author was like a passive, like, oh, and we all remember what happened with Bitcoin, as if it didn't work out. But regardless, the book was actually, I really enjoyed it. It was like it would be a cool movie.
I gotta check it out. The one thing on that is, from an economic perspective, the U.S. defaulting on their debt, I don't think matters much. It'll cause a little bit of confidence, but from a financial perspective, The U.S. kind of like no one is coming to the U.S. with tanks and guns to collect on that debt. But and that's the 30 trillion. It's the 150 trillion that the U.S. owns to its own people in unfunded liabilities. That's the debt. If that is defaulted upon, that's five times larger debt than their external national debt. No one should care about national debt. But if all of a sudden every government employee doesn't get a paycheck or gets a paycheck in very devalued money, that's a problem.
Yeah. That's part of like in the book, that's very much an aspect of it where like all of these unpaid unpaid liabilities are just reneged upon. Social Security is a joke.
Yeah, no one ever talks about the 150 trillion in unfunded liability.
Yeah, exactly. And it's pretty interesting to, as you're reading through like all of the shit that falls through and the way that the people deal with it and like the just kind of blatant basically like self-preservation that's happening and just like neighbors turning on each other and just like stealing each other's shit and even like going so far as to like force them out of their own homes at gunpoint to like take the people's homes. It's a crazy read, but it's a fun one. So anyways, it's called The Mandibles and it's by Lionel Shriver, so it's worth a read. I would check it out. But cool. Well, I'm gonna keep us rolling here, and we're gonna get into our last reason for being bullish. Again, everybody that's watching right now, thank you for being here. Hope you're having a good time. We're gonna jump to Don for a final reason for being bullish this week or this year, depending on the topic. What's on your mind, man?
So I'm super bullish on Bitcoin only companies, and more specifically, finally, some venture capital funding that's being dedicated solely to supporting Bitcoin only companies. I've been so tired of seeing the likes of A16Z, Consensus, all these large capital allocators just wanting nothing to do with Bitcoin only companies and funding every shitcoin company out there, and just having a vast misunderstanding of what Bitcoin is, what it will do, the probability of hyper Bitcoinization. They just don't understand any of it. So this year and specifically the last few months, you're starting to see more and more dedicated venture funds pop up dedicated to Bitcoin only companies, the likes of Tremble Venture Partners, 1031, Folger Ventures. The list kind of goes on and on. And I think that in conjunction with a lot of individual Bitcoiners who have seen their, purchasing power go up the longer they've been in Bitcoin and are also starting to, support Bitcoin only companies is just really great to see. And I think that's only something that's going to continue as Bitcoin keeps doing what it does. And more and more hodlers keep, supporting the network and their wealth goes up and the flywheel kind of just keeps working. So just super excited about that. And I'm glad it shouldn't have taken this long, but I'm glad the tides are finally starting to shift, it seems like.
I've got a question for you. What Bitcoin only companies are currently on your radar that you're really happy to see doing well?
Yeah. Oh man, so many. So Strike comes to mind, Compass Mining. Of course, you have like smaller startups like Oshi just getting off the ground, and all kinds of the different wallet providers, and of course all the Lightning development that's happening too. So it's just awesome to see that these founders who used to be kind of on their own as far as trying to bootstrap their business now are getting some more formalized support.
Yeah. And for like my conferences, like Unconfiscatable that's coming up, we only accept Bitcoin only sponsors. So it's not a large list. It's pretty challenging actually.
Yeah, most of them need a few more years before they, kind of have runway to be able to do things like that. But I think that's where the path is leading, for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. Block coming onto the space, I think, is going to be interesting to watch. Like, I think on Twitter Spaces sometimes you hear some OGs really worry about the brain drain of developers that has taken place over the last few years. And I can't speak intelligently about it, but I just had a few conversations about their concerns are real. And I think that with a lot more Bitcoin companies coming on board and dedicating some beef into the whole space and keep it developing a living network, I think that's a huge reason to be bullish for sure. But I'm gonna be paying attention to block for sure. But some of these smaller companies, Don, that you were talking about, I think that we should keep our eyes out on for them.
For sure. The other cool thing a lot of these venture funds are starting to do too is use portions of their management fees to support, Bitcoin developers and kind of giving that back to the ecosystem, which you definitely don't see the shitcoin VCs doing that. I can tell you that.
By the way, I think at the next cycle, I think if there's one more run up, let's say, I don't want to say Bitcoin above 100K, but Bitcoin above $250,000, you're going to see individual early Bitcoin adopters sponsoring core developers, right? Because now it becomes in their financial interest. Right. Hey, I'm now worth $30 to $50 million or more. What's the best way I can protect that? Well, you know what? Maybe I should give Luc Dasjour $1 million a year to make sure that the rest of my money stays safe and the price of Bitcoin rises. So I think right now that brunt is being taken up by companies. But I think that could switch to individuals. It's just not there yet.
That would be really interesting. The other thing that I liked in so much as Bitcoin only companies is seeing some companies pivot that were previously multi-coin and that went Bitcoin. So like one that comes to mind, I believe this year or perhaps last year, but CoinFloor in the UK, they dropped any altcoin. I think they had Ethereum and something else, but they dropped them all and just went Bitcoin only, which was really cool to see. Here in Canada, I would, poke, prod, Shakepay. I would love to see that as well. And there's opinions on that of people that work there as well. But regardless of that, I think it's a cool thing to see because there are people that are realizing kind of the long-term promise and are kind of giving themselves a lens through which they're looking at everything with low time preference. And you got to start planning for that Bitcoin future. And sure, you can probably make bank, shilling shitcoins and being a casino in the short term, but that's not going to be sustainable long term in a Bitcoin world. So I look forward to seeing more of that, people seeing the writing on the wall and seeing how kind of ridiculous everything else floating around is.
Yeah, I can't wait. The other cool thing is, since all of these people are so clueless as to what Bitcoin will do and what it is, it gives us Bitcoiners an opportunity to, jump in front of a lot of these larger capital allocators and get pieces of these Bitcoin companies that, if hyper Bitcoinization happens the way we all think it will be worth orders of magnitude more than any crypto company will be in the future. So their ignorance is a benefit for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Some witty username 30 in the comments was saying Level is another one that I believe they're dropping altcoins and they're kind of like a neobank.
It would be very hard for wallets to do it, right? Like once a wallet chosen to go the path of protecting your shitcoins, it's hard. Like you can't do it. But like you can't release new firmware that now deactivates the shitcoin, right? Because then people are gonna lose their money. So that's one of the challenges for that.
Yeah, exactly. If you're a wallet creator, that can be difficult. You can have a separate. I mean, there's a couple companies that have gone the route of having Bitcoin only firmware as an option. Which, if anybody has a hardware wallet and that's an option, then definitely move to the Bitcoin only firmware to reduce attack vectors. But Bitcoin only native is excellent. Yeah. And then in terms of, since we're on Bitcoin only topic, any Bitcoin only wallets, whether it be hardware, software, that you guys are currently fans of? What's
I just paid my barber in Blue Wallet today
nice.
for
Yeah.
the first time ever. I should say it was just a tip, but I paid him in cash for the actual haircut, but tipped him in Blue Wallet. It's just so easy to use and it's pretty. So yeah, Blue Wallet is like what everyone's wallet is, but it's the one that I'm bragging about today.
Nice.
I think Hexa Wallet is kind of a new entrant that's pretty cool. Integrated directly with Swan, so you can stack directly to your wallet. And they released a gifting feature here recently too that makes it super easy to send Bitcoin to people. And if they don't use it within a certain amount of time, I believe it gets swept back to your wallet. So they have some cool, unique features. I need to play around with it more, but sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna.
Jade. Samsung just tweeted out. Someone literally just bought their entire inventory. Someone just like, yep, I'll take all 1,500 of these. And yeah, it's I can't wait for them to release the new features. It's just like the cool things in a little wallet. Like, it has an internal battery, so you don't have to have it plugged in. You can connect with Bluetooth to your device. It has a built-in camera. It's not functioning yet, but it's there, and it's really, really cool. I think.
Yeah. And affordable, hey? Like they're like
Yeah.
30 or $40 or something price point for hardware wallet. That's pretty solid. That's like the cheapest on the market, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool to see stuff like that. Also, they support, like, so you can use Bitcoin and you can use Liquid Network on it as well. So you can kind of go between the two with blocks from Green.
Speaking of which, I'm really bullish for a Liquid Network. I think that is gonna potentially shine starting next year. People are going to realize they can build on top of Bitcoin, whether it's NFTs, whether it's whatever. And I think Liquid Network will start to take off like Lightning started to take off last year. I think Liquid will start to take off like that next year, with the year going into the halving, where transaction fees are probably going to start getting more expensive on chain. And people are going to be using Lightning more, but they're also going to be looking at Liquid for many reasons. We're not going to get into it now, but maybe another podcast.
Yeah. No, Liquid is definitely cool. I've been playing around with it, and it's very the user interface and the user experience is effectively the same as you would get with a regular Bitcoin transaction, just with a few extra bells and whistles, and trade-offs, of course, with Liquid, but for smaller amounts, for depending on and what your comfort is, it's definitely a viable option too. So I think we're gonna round this out, guys. I want to say thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate this conversation. This is a good one, and a good way to cap off the year with all you guys. Maybe really quick, let's just go down the line. And Tone, I know you're tight on time, so just any final thought you may have, and just also where can people find you?
Sure. No, I'm looking forward to an amazing 2022 when it comes to Bitcoin. Hopefully, people will start traveling again. That's really my only thought. I'm really liking where Bitcoin is. It's done amazingly well. And where can people find me? Well, just Tone Vays, pretty much everywhere: Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Be careful with fake tones. They're everywhere. I'm sure, Ben, you're dealing with the same thing. I still try to travel and speak, but I'm focusing more on my own conferences. The next one coming up is going to be in Las Vegas, March 3rd to 6th, 1 month before Bitcoin 2022 down in Miami. Ben, would love to have you speak there as well. You spoke at my last one, Understanding Bitcoin. Not sure when the next one is going to be. And also have a financially related one called the Financial Summit. You can find all that stuff on my website.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here, man. Let's get a few other people's outros here. Don, again, any final thoughts, and where can people find you?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ben. This has been fun. Bullish on Bitcoin in 2022. I don't know how it's going to top 21, but Bitcoin tends to surprise us. So I'll be watching. For people that want to connect with me, I'm KC_Hodl on Twitter. And if anybody ever comes through Kansas City and wants to check out our meetup, all of our details are on kcbitcoiners.com. So check that out. And thanks again for having me.
Yeah, no worries, man. Trent, you're up.
Yeah, just for final thoughts, I'd say one Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin. I couldn't care less that we're sitting at sub 50K at the end of the year, when I myself was, thinking we'd be at 200K plus. But I think it's a blessing in disguise, especially if we want this money to be a money that's for the people, just giving us more time to stack cheap sats. I really do think that it's a blessing. So be patient with friends and family that you're trying to onboard. This is a really radical concept, so take your time with them, give them the education that it requires, and just try to hammer in the point that one Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin. So you can find me on Twitter. I'm at _T Dudenhoeffer. I'm not going to spell it, but you can sound it out. And also want to give a shout out to the KC Bitcoiners. That's a great group. I've met some fantastic friends at the KC Bitcoin meetup in the last year. We're up to like Don said, we started with like 3 or 4 people, and now we get like 40 plus regularly. And that's in large part thanks to Don. And also Mitch and, the other supporters there. So thank you so much for having me on, Ben. It was a blast.
Hey, no worries. Glad to have you. And just so I don't butcher it again,
Jaime.
Jaime. Okay.
Yeah.
It's up for you now.
All right. Yeah. So, I host weekly spaces on Twitter for Salvies in El Salvador and in diaspora. It's a Spanish show. So if you know Spanish, feel free to hang out with us. And I teach people, how to use Bitcoin. Besides that, I also host a monthly show with Global Bitcoin Fest with Lucas Dutsko, which Ben, you should definitely have on this show, because he's one of the creators of Global Bitcoin Fest, and they for the El Salvador Law Day, we actually had like a 24-hour nonstop space with people from all over the world. We've done Costa Rica, we've done Japan. On January 1st, we're doing at 10 p.m. Eastern, we're doing Indonesia. I'm not hosting that one, but the next one that I'm hosting is Bitcoin Lake, Guatemala, and that'll be on January 9th at 8 p.m. In February, we're hosting Brazil, and March, Ecuador, and we're working on Puerto Rico and some others. So, just follow me and on Twitter at Jaime W. Garcia. And you can I'll post all the info there. So we didn't get to talk about Costa Rica, so maybe we'll chat about that some other day. So
definitely. Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for being here again. I'm gonna kill your audio and video here, but you are all welcome back anytime. So
thanks guys. I need to go visit like the meetup. I was so close to Kansas City.
Let's go.
Ozark, Missouri. And I gotta make it to Kansas City, Missouri one of these days.
For sure.
We'll get some barbecue and a couple beers. Come out anytime.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks again, Ben. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Awesome. All right, everybody watching, thank you so much for joining us. Great way to not only end off a week, but end off a year. It's been a crazy year for Bitcoin, and I'm sure that there'll be many more surprises in store for 2022. So we'll keep bumping out the shows. We're always bullish here. Always. It doesn't matter what the price is, because we're bullish on Bitcoin in its entirety and what it's achieving, and how it's helping people globally in very different ways depending on how you decide to use it. So again, guys, it's been a hell of a year, and I also have to say thank you very much for everybody's support. I was talking earlier about how many people have been watching the show, watching the tutorials, just nice comments, sharing the show around. I've been so flattered whenever anybody recommends a video tutorial of mine, and hearing that people use them. And it's again, a very heartfelt thank you for making it possible that this could be my livelihood. To be able to do this is insane to me. It still hasn't set in, and I've been doing it full time with no outside job for a year and a half now. And I've been running the channel for going on in, I believe in June it'll be 6 years. So 5.5 years of the show. So again, thank you guys very much. Another amazing year. And as always, of course, like, sub, share, all those things. Keep growing it. I really do appreciate whenever anybody does that. All of the guys that were on the show today, their Twitter handles are in the show notes, so you can follow them there. Of course, if you want to help the show in another way, you can hit up the previously mentioned sponsors down below: Shakepay, LEDN, Bitrefill, Keystone, and BillFodl. And if you really liked what you saw, you can always drop me a Bitcoin tip at my Strike page or on Twitter. Actually, I do have the tipping thing turned on Twitter as well, but Strike page is strike.me/BTC sessions. You go there, you type in any amount you want, hit the tip button. You will be greeted with a Lightning invoice, or if you tap to the right, just a regular Bitcoin QR code. With that, I'm out, you guys. Thank you again for a wonderful year. Have a great night and a great New Year's Eve. And I'll see you guys next time, next year, for your daily session.
Hodl the Bitcoin.